a protagonist with some powerful abilities with supposed drawbacks, downsides, or a price to pay for using them that are meant to give balance to these skills, and yet in reality they fail to affect the flow of the story in any meaningful way. This definitely is an issue that will require my attention when creating a protagonist who uses anything beyond his or her own body, because even I do to an extent enjoy a protagonist who is equipped with some sort of a supernatural or magical power. But if the element that's supposed to bring equilibrium to the equation just gets mentioned once when the skill or the ability or the power are introduced, and then they never truly negatively affect anything, introduces a problem to me as the author that I have to deal with, and for me as the reader, introduces an element that I don't want to encounter in a story that is just fully positive. As I said, I don't mind introducing these powers, but they need a real balance, positives and negatives that matter, and I want to allow the protagonists to grow themselves, but I also don't want to just cuddle them with cheat codes for every individual situations that pretend to have some sort of a downside, but in reality that downside gets immediately countered by another power introduced right afterwards. And then, even if I, by some miracle, do achieve this sort of balance, then I also need to introduce the opponents with their own set of skills and make sure that they won't end up being just these piñatas or training dummies for the protagonists to unleash their arsenal upon. I need to make sure that I don't introduce this ultra powerful finisher move that has the supposed downside of losing all the previously acquired powers or something like that, just to immediately afterwards introduce another tool that gives the protagonist a different set of powers, something that would just create this vicious cycle of, well, nonsense. Those powerful skills need real downsides, and when the usage and thus the downsides accumulate, they need to have actual consequences, not just, oh, lucky me, I found this extremely rare herb that can deal with the after effects of using this powerful skill on an opponent that was only damageable by that very skill. All of this will require planning, and that requires usage of my brain, which is truly scary, but hopefully will be worth it. That's for the intro. And now for the rapid arrows. I've mentioned in the previous video that there are some more serious events incoming, but it starts with a funny song that became a nightmare in my family because it ended up being sung in almost any imaginable situation when someone wasn't exactly ready to kickstart the day with a smile on their face, and it's Jarka Metelka blowing a trumpet and singing a song wake up, sleep is sluggard, wake up, sun is shining. And in Czech, let's just say that it's a bit annoying when it's 6 a.m., it's weekend, and someone is singing this right next to your ear. Well, nevertheless, the club members are getting ready for another activity promoted by the Herald, and that's helping with the harvest. And already during the breakfast, Mirek notes that the weather is weird, that the air feels heavy, but despite that, the boys arrive at the farm ready to do some work. They are going to gather the grain stalks and tie them into sheaves, and while doing so, the weather is becoming increasingly uncomfortable. It's hot even without the sun properly shining, and then the skies truly go dark, and it's clear that a huge thunderstorm is coming, and it arrives way too fast so that they are unable to retreat properly and have to somehow weather the bad weather still in the fields. And this is one of those lessons that Foglar wanted to give to his readers. The boys are warning the adults that are running away from the storm in a rather haphazard manner, that they should not be running when a storm catches them in the field. They should walk slowly, find some cover, and lie down and wait. The adults that should know this are not exactly listening, and when the storm is right above their heads, Redcap sees someone running, a lightning striking, and the person falling down. He tries to stand up, but Mirek grabs him and tells him that there is nothing he can do right now other than get hit himself, so they need to wait for the storm to pass. So when it's seemingly over, Mirek issues a command to slowly walk towards the person that collapsed. There are already people gathering around, and when they arrive, it's clear that there is no helping here. One of the men standing around takes off his hat in a sign of respect for the deceased and says superstitiously that a god's herald struck the person, because back then, especially in the countryside, these ideas were still quite prevalent. And then there is the final warning, a summary from Fogler himself saying that it is dangerous to run during the storm in the fields and that you should lie down, otherwise you are risking a lightning strike. In the next story, there is another club having a meeting, and they are convinced that the Rapid Arrows are going to send a letter to the Herald describing all the nefarious deeds that they have committed, and thus have to absolutely intercept the message before it reaches the Herald's office. So they decide to surround the club room of the Rapid Arrows and make sure that nothing gets out. In reality, Mirek is currently writing notes regarding a novel for the Herald, and they are basically sending them to the author of the Rapid Arrows, Jaroslav Foglar, sort of a fourth wall breaking story. And Jindra is sent with the letter, has to submit it, recommend it, because otherwise it would arrive too late and the author wouldn't have the material to continue the novel. Jindra leaves and is immediately followed by the boys from the yard. They are going to encircle him, but he notices them in a mirror in a shop's window, and the chase begins. Indra is motivating himself, saying that the editorial office is never going to talk to them ever again unless he delivers the letter on time, because losing it would mean that there would be no novel in the next issue. He is holding on fairly well, but unfortunately, the noose is tightening around his neck, and the pursuers are both behind and in front of him. So, the only way out of this situation is to hide inside a yard. He runs up the stairs, and then there is no way out. So, he hangs from a railing and threatens the boy from the other club that he is going to drop down if they take even a single step forward. They call out his bluff and demand the ladder, but it wasn't a bluff, and he jumps onto a nearby roof, notices a ladder, and resumes the escape. The pursuers are startled at first, but then decide that whatever he can do, they can do as well, and they start jumping over. Indra, meanwhile, sees on a clock that the post office is closing soon, and the tension is rising. The other boys are close, and he has to risk it. There are some pallets, straw beds stacked underneath the building that he is currently on, and that's the only way down fast enough to escape the pursuit and deliver the ladder in time. A moment of weightlessness, chills down to the bone marrow, and the longest unpowered flight of Indra's life lands him safely. The boys stop in their tracks, scared witless, lamenting that their hearts would burst if they were to attempt this jump, and Indra arrives at the post office just before it's closing, and after a small mishap where he messes up the word recommendo multiple times, the lady behind the counter just tells him to use the Czech equivalent doporučeně instead, and that he's lucky that he just made it in the nick of time, and thus the future story is saved. Well, that's the end for today's video, and yeah, I'm going to continue more protagonists, more rapid arrows.